My name is Tessa Myers. I'm 32, and I run a cattle ranch in Grady County, Oklahoma. 3 weeks ago, my barn burned down. I called my parents at 2 in the morning, standing in a field that smelled like charred wood and melted rubber. My mother picked up. She told me they were at my brother Travis's birthday dinner. She said they'd call me back. They didn't. 4 days later, my parents drove 45 minutes to the ranch. They didn't come to help. They didn't come to ask if I was okay. They came to demand 50% of my grandmother's inheritance. What my husband pulled out of that kitchen drawer turned my father's face the color of ash. But to understand why his hands shook, you need to know what kind of family I come from. Welcome back to my channel. This is the channel where we share stories about family betrayal, quiet, strength, and the moment someone finally says enough. If these stories speak to you, drop a comment and be sure to subscribe. Growing up, my father made the rules clear without ever saying them out loud. Travis got new boots every fall. I got Travis's hand-me-down jacket with the torn lining. Travis got driving lessons at 15 from a buddy of Dad's at the garage. I was told my husband would drive me someday. When report cards came, Travis's C- in shop class got a high 5. My straight A's in biology got a nod and a plate of meatloaf. It wasn't cruelty exactly, it was math. In Frank Myers' household, there were 2 children, but only 1 investment. When college came around, Dad paid for Travis's 2 semesters at a trade school in Chickasha. Travis dropped out halfway through the second one. Dad shrugged and said he'll figure it out. I applied for a scholarship on my own, got accepted to the agricultural science program at Oklahoma State, and packed my bags on a Tuesday morning while Dad was at his garage. Beverly, my mother, slipped a $50 bill into a sock inside my suitcase and whispered, "Don't tell your father." That was the most she ever did, the most she ever risked. At my high school graduation, Dad spent most of the ceremony telling Travis about a carburetor he was rebuilding. When I walked across the stage, Dad clapped. Once, polite, the way you clap for someone else's kid. Travis didn't graduate from anything but the spring I left for college. Dad handed him the keys to a used Dodge Ram and said, "A man needs his own truck." I took the Greyhound to Stillwater, and I remember thinking, sitting in that bus seat with my mother's $50 tucked in a sock, that if I ever had something of my own, I'd build it with my hands and nobody would ever tell me I didn't earn it. But there was one person in the family who saw things differently. Grandma Elaine, my father's mother. She ran a 160-acre cattle ranch on the eastern edge of Grady County for 30 years by herself. Her husband, my grandfather, died in a tractor rollover when Dad was 11. People expected Elaine to sell. She was 47, alone, and the county assessor told her the land was worth more subdivided. She told him she'd think about it. Then she went out the next morning, repaired the fence line along the south pasture, and never mentioned selling again. Every summer while Travis went to sports camp, paid for by Dad, of course, I spent 2 weeks at Grandma Elaine's ranch. She taught me how to string barbed wire without cutting my palms open, how to read the sky before a storm, how to pull a calf when the cow couldn't do it alone. She never talked badly about my father. That wasn't her way. But once, while we were patching a gate hinge, she stopped, looked at me over her reading glasses and said, "Your father left this land because he thought it was beneath him. You stayed because you knew it wasn't." She said it the same way she said everything, flat, quiet, like she was telling me which pasture needed mowing. I didn't know what she meant at the time. I was 14. Later, I understood. Elaine watched Dad pour money into Travis year after year. The truck, the apartment deposit, the startup capital for an auto parts store. She watched him do none of that for me. She never said a word about it to Dad. But 2 years before she died, Grandma Elaine walked into an estate attorney's office in Chickasha and sat down for the first of several appointments. I didn't learn that until later. I met Cole at a soil health workshop run by the state extension office. He was an agricultural auditor, the kind of man who got excited about spreadsheets and feed conversion ratios. We talked for 2 hours at that workshop, not about feelings, about hay prices and grazing rotations. Our first date was at a diner in Chickasha, where the iced tea came in mason jars and the waitress called everyone honey. Cole proposed 14 months later, standing in the parking lot of a feed store because he said he didn't want to wait until the restaurant. We got married at the county fairground. Small ceremony, folding chairs, a cake from the Walmart bakery that Beverly picked up because I asked her to. Dad came. He wore his good boots. His toast, and I use that word loosely, was about Travis's plans for the auto parts store. How Travis was going to make the Myers name mean something in business. Beverly stared at the floor. Cole's parents gave us a set of cast iron skillets and a check for $500. Dad's wedding gift to me was nothing. The same month, he gave Travis $15,000 to get the store up and running. When the reception was winding down, Grandma Elaine pulled me aside near the horse barn. She took my hand and said, "I'm making sure you're taken care of, but not yet. You'll understand when the time comes." She squeezed my fingers once, hard, the way she squeezed a fence plier. Then she walked back to her folding chair and ate a piece of cake. Dad found me 10 minutes later adjusting a strap on my shoe. He put his hand and said, "You married well. That should be enough." Grandma Elaine died 14 months after my wedding. She passed in her sleep on a Wednesday in February, 82 years old. The hospice nurse said she went easy, which I suppose is the kindest thing anyone can say about death. Funeral was at the small Baptist church on Route 9 outside Tuttle. Half the county came. Ranchers who remembered her husband, women from the quilting circle who hadn't seen her in years. Dad sat in the front pew with his jaw set, the way men do when they don't know whether to grieve or manage. A week later, we gathered at the office of Linda Ashworth, Grandma Elaine's estate attorney. Linda was 61, silver-haired, still sharp as barbed wire. She opened a folder and explained that Elaine had established an irrevocable living trust 3 years prior. The trust named one beneficiary, me. The ranch land, all 160 acres and $95,000 in savings, went to Tessa Nicole Myers. Not Frank, not Travis, not Split, all of it. Dad's chair scraped the floor when he stood. She was my mother. That land was supposed to come to me. Linda folded her hands. "Mr. Myers, the trust is irrevocable. It cannot be altered after the grantor's death. You were notified today. Oklahoma law gives you 2 years to contest. That window starts now." Dad pointed at me like I had done something to him. Beverly grabbed his arm. Travis sat in the corner with his jaw tight. Linda then handed me a sealed envelope. Thick, cream-colored, Elaine's handwriting on the front. Linda said, "Your grandmother gave me this separately. She asked me to give it to you, not to your father. Her instructions were clear." I turned the envelope over. On the back, in Elaine's careful cursive, "Give this to your father when he shows you who he really is. You'll know when." I put the envelope in my bag. I did not open it. For 4 years, I kept it in a fireproof safe at the ranch. I almost forgot it was there. Almost. Cole and I moved onto Grandma Elaine's land that spring. We used $40,000 of the trust money for fencing, a used cattle chute, a stock tank, and barn repairs. The rest went into a savings account earmarked for emergencies. Cole kept his auditory job for the first 2 years, while I ran the ranch solo during the day. I fed cattle at dawn, checked fences by mid-morning, handled vet appointments, cleaned stalls, filed paperwork, and collapsed into bed by 9-hour. Year. Snorts, too. Cole quit the extension office and came on full-time. We bought our first 85 head of commercial Angus at a regional auction in Purcell. Sold calves every fall, at a modest profit. We were not rich. Our truck was a 2009 Ford F-250, with rust on both fenders and a passenger door that stuck in cold weather. We ate beans and cornbread 3 nights a week. But the ranch was ours, built by our hands on land that Elaine had worked for 3 decades before us. Dad never visited, not once in 4 years. He drove past the county road that leads to our gate every week on his way to the part supplier in Blanchard, but he never turned in. Beverly called on Christmas each year. The calls lasted under 3 minutes. She asked how the weather was. She asked if the cattle were doing well. She never asked how I was. Travis drove past the gate a few times. I saw his truck slow down near the cattle guard. He never stopped. I told Cole once, sitting on the porch, after a long day of bailing, "I don't need them to show up. I just need them to stop pretending I don't exist." Cole said, "They're not pretending. They just decided it's easier." Around that time, I heard through the feed store owner that Travis's auto part shop was struggling. Inventory sitting on shelves. Payroll getting tight. People in town talked. The fire started on a Thursday in October. I woke at 1:40 in the morning to the smell of smoke coming through the bedroom window. By the time I pulled on boots and got outside, the main barn was fully engulfed. Orange against black sky, the kind of fire that eats old wood like paper. Cole called 911. The volunteer fire department out of Tuttle arrived in 22 minutes, standard for a rural run. They saved the house. They saved the calving barn on the south end. They couldn't save the main barn or the equipment shed attached to it. We lost the hay storage, 2 seasons of baled Bermuda grass stacked floor to ceiling. We lost the feed mixer, a tractor attachment, fencing tools, the portable cattle panel set, and a chest freezer full of vaccine. The fire marshal's preliminary report pointed to faulty electrical wiring, old knob and tube from Elaine's original construction in the 1970s. I'd been saving to replace it. The estimate had come in at $11,000. I was $2,000 short. The estimated damage came to roughly $180,000. Insurance would cover most of it. We carried a farm mutual policy with dwelling, outbuilding, and equipment endorsements, but the claim process would take weeks. Meanwhile, $180,000 worth of ranch infrastructure was a smoking pile of twisted metal and charred timber. Cole and I stood in the yard, ash drifting like gray snow. The cattle in the south pasture stood at the fence line and watched. The fireproof safe in the barn's small office section was still bolted to the concrete pad. I could see it through the wreckage, blackened but intact. I didn't think about what was inside it. Not yet. At 2014 in the morning, standing in that field, I picked up my phone and called my mother. Beverly picked up after I'd almost given up waiting. I could hear music in the background, laughter, glasses clinking. "Mom," I said, "the barn burned down. The whole thing. We lost everything inside it." There was a pause. I heard someone say something I couldn't make out. Then Beverly's voice came back, distracted, like I'd interrupted something she was paying attention to. "Oh, honey, that's awful. Listen, we're at Travis's birthday dinner right now. Can I call you back tomorrow?" I stood in a field of ash with my boots melting on the edges, and my mother told me my brother's 29th birthday dinner was more important. "We're busy, Tessa. It's Travis's birthday." In the background, Dad's voice. "Who is it? Tell them we're in the middle of something." "Beverly, I'll call you tomorrow, okay? Love you." And she hung up. I stared at the phone screen until it went dark. Cole was standing behind me. He'd heard enough to know. He didn't ask what they said. He put his hand on the back of my neck, the way he does when there's nothing useful to say. I told him anyway. She said it's Travis's birthday. They're at Applebee's or wherever. Mom said she'd call back tomorrow. Cole's face didn't change, but his hand tightened on my neck just slightly. Beverly did not call back the next day. She did not call the day after that. She did not call for 72 hours. And when she finally did, it wasn't about the fire. I wasn't surprised. That's what I told Cole the next morning, over coffee, both of us still smelling like smoke. I wasn't surprised. He nodded. "That's the worst part," he said. "You're right. It was. If you've ever called someone you loved during the worst moment of your life and heard them say they're busy, you know exactly what that silence feels like after they hang up. If this story is hitting close, leave a comment. Tell me, have your parents ever chosen a sibling's convenience over your crisis? I'll be reading everyone. The next morning, I filed the insurance claim. Farm Mutual through the state cooperative. Cole had made sure our policy included outbuilding and equipment endorsements when we first signed up. The adjuster was scheduled for the following week. In the meantime, Cole rigged feed station using the calving barn on the south end. We borrowed a neighbor's tractor, Ray Whitfield, 3 miles down the county road, drove it over without being asked, and left the keys on the seat. 2 other rancher families brought hay bales. The Garshis dropped off 8 rounds on a flatbed. Old Mrs. Ketchum from the feed store extended us 30 days of credit and told me not to worry about it. That's what rural people do. They don't send cards. They show up with hay. Dad did not show up with hay. He did not call. Beverly did not call. Travis did not call. Travis did not call. Then, 3 days after the fire, Beverly's name appeared on my phone. I picked up expecting condolences. She didn't mention the fire first. She said, "Tessa, that land Grandma left you, does your insurance cover the buildings on it?" Something clicked in my chest. Not surprise, recognition. I felt it the way you feel a cold front moving in, slow pressure, then a drop. "Why do you ask, Mom?" Beverly said. "Oh, no reason. Just wondering. Your father was asking." I kept my voice even. "The insurance covers the structures, yes. Cole handles the policy." Beverly paused. Then cheerfully, "Okay. Well, we'll let you get back to it. Talk soon." I set the phone down on the kitchen counter. Cole looked at me. I said, "They're not calling about the fire. They're calling about the money." That evening, Cole pulled the ranch financial binder from the filing cabinet, the one he organized with color-coded tabs, because old auditor habits don't die. We sat at the kitchen table and went through everything. The irrevocable trust documents, Elaine as grantor, me as sole beneficiary, administered through Linda Ashworth's office. The deed, recorded in Grady County. Tessa Nicole Myers, fee simple, absolute. The insurance policy. Policyholders, Tessa and Cole Myers. No liens, no encumbrances, no third-party claims. Cole closed the binder. They can't touch the trust, he said. Statute ran out 2 years ago. The insurance payout goes to us. We're the policyholders. The land is deeded. There's no legal mechanism for Frank to claim any of this. I nodded. He doesn't know that. Dad still thinks being the son means something in probate court. We sat quiet for a minute. The coffee maker dripped. Outside, a coyote called from somewhere past the south fence. Then I said, "The letter." Cole looked at me. "You've had it 4 years," he said. "Elaine told you to give it to him when he shows you who he really is." I stared at the kitchen drawer where I kept the pens, the ranch checkbook, a roll of electrical tape. The fireproof safe was still out in the rubble. I'd need to open it soon. "Has he?" Cole asked. "Not yet," I said, "but I think he's about to." We decided 2 things that night. First, we'd call Linda Ashworth in the morning to confirm the trust was bulletproof. Second, if Frank came asking, we'd be ready. Not with anger, not with lawyers at the door, with the truth, which, in the end, is the only thing that holds weight. 5 days after the fire, a truck I recognized pulled up the ranch road. Travis. He parked near the cattle guard and walked over to the burned-out barn site. With his hands in his jacket pockets, looking around the way someone looks at a house they're thinking about buying. Not grief. Appraisal. "Wow, Tess," he said, kicking a chunk of charred timber with his boot. "This is bad. You going to be able to keep running this place?" I was hauling a section of twisted roofing panel to the scrap pile. I set it down and pulled off my gloves. "We filed the claim. We'll rebuild." Travis nodded slowly, like he was thinking about something he'd rehearsed. "You know, Dad's been saying Grandma's land, this whole setup, it should have been split 50/50. He's been talking to people." "What people?" Travis shrugged. "I don't know. People. Lawyers, maybe?" He said lawyers the way a child says the doctor, vaguely, hoping the word alone would do the work. I looked at my brother, 29 years old, managing a failing auto parts store on a corner lot in Chickasha, wearing a jacket Dad bought him. He hadn't called when the barn burned. He hadn't texted. He drove out here 5 days later to scout the property value. "Tell Dad if he wants to talk," I said. "He can come here himself." Travis stood there a moment, then turned and walked back to his truck without saying goodbye. I watched the tailgate disappear down the county road. Then I called Cole at the feed store. "They're coming," I said. "Travis was just here doing recon." Cole said, "I figured." Travis hadn't visited the ranch once in 4 years. He didn't come for the fire. He didn't come for the fire. He came for the land. 2 days later, Cole and I sat across from Linda Ashworth's in her office on Main Street in Chickasha. Linda was 65 now, semi-retired, but still sharp enough to spot a loophole in a fence contract at 50 paces. She'd been Grandma Elaine's attorney for the last decade of her life, and she knew the trust inside and out. "The trust is solid," Linda said, tapping the folder with her index finger. "Irrevocable. Executed properly, witnessed and notarized. Tessa is the sole beneficiary. Frank was notified at the reading 4 years ago. Oklahoma statute of limitations for contesting a trust is 2 years from the date of notification. That window closed 23 months ago." Cole asked about the insurance. Linda shook her head. "Insurance payout goes to the policyholder. That's you and Tessa. No lien, no third-party interest. Frank has no standing." I asked about the sealed letter. Linda's face softened. The first time I'd seen anything besides professionalism in her expression. "Elaine asked me about that specifically." Linda said she wanted to make absolutely certain it wasn't a legal document. No testamentary language, no codicil implications, just a personal letter. I reviewed it for her. She paused. I told Elaine it had no legal weight. She smiled and said, "It won't need legal weight, it'll carry its own." We left Linda's office and stood on the sidewalk in the October sun. Cole said, "Your grandmother was something." I said, "She was a rancher. She planned 3 seasons ahead." Linda had shaken my hand at the door and said one last thing. "Your grandmother was the sharpest woman I ever represented. She saw all of this coming 10 years ago." I believed her. 2 days after Travis's visit, Beverly called. I could tell by the quiet on her end that she was alone. No garage noise, no TV. Dad was at work. "Tessa, I need to tell you something." She said, Her voice was different, smaller. Your father has been talking about hiring a lawyer about Grandma's estate. I said, I know. Long pause. Then Beverly said something I'd waited 32 years to hear. I tried to tell him it's been too long. That you earned that land. I told him you work harder than anyone I know. I held the phone and waited. She wasn't done. But he won't listen. He says it's about principle, that a mother's estate should go to her son. Another pause. I heard her breathing. Then her voice cracked just slightly, like a branch bending before it snaps. I know it's not fair, Tessa. I've always known. She stopped. The silence stretched. I just couldn't say it when it mattered. I closed my eyes. For a moment, I let myself imagine this was the conversation that changed everything. That my mother was finally choosing the truth over comfort. Then I heard it. The crunch of tires on gravel in the background. Dad's truck pulling into the driveway. Beverly's tone switched like someone had flipped a breaker. Bright, brisk, detached. Anyway, I should go. We'll see you soon, okay? And she hung up. I set the phone on the counter. I wanted to feel something. Forgiveness, pity, connection. But Beverly had been almost apologizing for 32 years. The almost was the problem. My mother's courage had a timer on it. It lasted exactly as long as my father was out of earshot. A week and a half after the fire, the insurance adjuster had come and gone. Preliminary estimate, $178,000 minus a $6,000 deductible. The check would take weeks. But at least we had numbers. Cole and I started clearing debris from the barn site. It was ugly, physical work, hauling charred 2x12s, shoveling ash, dragging twisted sheet metal to a scrap pile near the fence line. Snorts. My hands blistered through my gloves. My shoulders ached in a way that felt earned. On the third day of cleanup, we reached the office section, a small partitioned corner of the barn where I kept the ranch files, the vaccine log, and the fireproof safe. The safe was still bolted to the concrete foundation pad. Its exterior was blackened, the paint blistered off in sheets, but the steel was intact. I knelt beside it and spun the combination lock. 4 numbers, Grandma Elaine had written on an index card and taped inside her medicine cabinet, where I found it after she passed. The lock turned. The door swung open. Inside, a copy of the ranch deed, a copy of the trust documents, $3,200 in emergency cash that smelled faintly of smoke, Grandma Elaine's wedding ring, a thin, gold band worn smooth from 30 years of fence work, and the envelope. Cream-colored, Elaine's handwriting on the front. For Frank. When Tessa is ready. I pulled it out and held it in both hands. 4 years. I had kept it for 4 years without opening it, without peeking. I carried it inside to the kitchen table. Cole looked at it, then at me. Neither of us spoke for a while. I turned the envelope over. On the back, in Elaine's careful cursive, he won't like what I wrote, but he needs to read it. And you need to let him. I broke the seal that evening. Cole sat across from me at the kitchen table. The house was quiet, just the hum of the refrigerator and the wind picking up outside. Inside the envelope was a single sheet of ranch stationery, the kind with the small cattle brand logo at the top that Elaine had custom printed at the office supply store in Blanco 20 years ago. Her handwriting was steady, not shaky, not rushed. Written by a woman who knew exactly what she wanted to say. Dear Frank, it began. If Tessa's giving you this letter, it means you finally showed her what I already knew. You chose easy over right. You chose Travis because giving to him felt like giving to yourself, the boy you wished you'd been, the son who wouldn't leave. But Travis didn't stay out of loyalty, Frank. He stayed because you made staying comfortable. Tessa left because you made leaving necessary. I didn't leave this land to Tessa to punish you. I left it to her because she's the only one who will work it the way I did. On her knees in the dirt before sunrise, because the land doesn't care about your last name or your excuses. You are my son and I love you. But love doesn't mean I owe you what you didn't earn. Mom, I read it twice. Then I set it down on the table between us. Cole picked it up, read it once, and folded it carefully back into the envelope. She wrote this knowing exactly what would happen, he said. I nodded. She always did. That letter, barely a page on ranch stationery, was the heaviest thing I'd ever held. heavier than a bale of wet hay, heavier than the phone call Beverly never returned. I put it back in the envelope and handed it to Cole. "You hold it," I said. "When the time comes, you give it to him. I trust your timing more than mine." Grandma Elaine wrote that letter, knowing it would sit in a safe for years. She trusted Tessa to know the right time. If you had a grandmother or anyone in your family who saw you when no one else did, this moment probably hit different. Drop a comment and tell me about that person. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe so you don't miss what happens when Frank finally reads those words. 3 days later, my phone rang. Dad's name on the screen. First time in over a year. I picked up. His voice was the way it always got when he decided something and expected the world to cooperate. Flat, certain, a little too loud. "Tessa, your mother and I are coming out to the ranch Saturday. We need to discuss the property situation." "What property situation, Dad?" "Don't play dumb. Mom left you everything and cut me out. That's not right. I talked to a guy at the VFW who does real estate law. He says I might have grounds." I almost told him right then about the statue, about Linda Ashworth, about the letter sitting in our kitchen drawer. But I didn't. Because Grandma Elaine didn't write that letter for a phone call. She wrote it for a moment. "You're welcome to come Saturday," I said. "Cole and I will be here." I kept my voice even. No edge, no invitation to argue. After I hung up, I told Cole. He opened the kitchen drawer, placed the envelope inside, right next to the ranch checkbook and a roll of electrical tape, and closed it. "I'll hold it," he said. "You just focus on what you need to say." I stood at the sink and looked out the window at the burned-out barn site. The concrete foundation pad was still there, solid, level, ready for whatever we built next. Grandma said to give it to him when he shows me who he really is, I said. He's about to drive 45 minutes to this ranch, not to help me clear a burned barn, not to ask how I'm doing, to demand half of what his own mother chose to give me. If that's not showing who he is, I don't know what is. Cole nodded. Saturday then. Travis wouldn't be there. Dad had told him to stay home. This was between Frank and his daughter. Friday night, I walked the property alone. Dusk in October in Grady County turns the sky the color of a peach pit, pink edges fading into gray. I walked past the burned barn foundation, past the south pasture where the cattle graze like nothing had happened, past the old fence post where Grandma Elaine had carved her initials, E.M., into the wood with a pocket knife sometime in the 1980s. I put my hand on it. The wood was rough and warm from the day's sun. I thought about what Elaine would do tomorrow, not what she'd say, what she'd do. Elaine never yelled at anyone. She never raised her voice in an argument. She didn't believe in threats. She believed in showing up early, doing the work, and letting the results stand for themselves. When the county tried to rezone her land for a gravel quarry in 2004, she didn't hire a protest attorney. She showed up to the zoning board meeting with 30 years of tax receipts, a soil conservation report, and a calm voice. The board voted 6-1 to leave her land alone. I decided, tomorrow, I would not raise my voice. I would not beg. I would not apologize for inheriting what I earned. Back at the house, Cole had organized everything into a single manila envelope, the trust summary, the insurance documents, and Elaine's letter. He put it in the kitchen drawer. Not to wave around, not to slam on the table for dramatic effect, just to have it ready. If he screams, I'm going to sit there and let him, I told Cole before bed. Grandma never screamed back at anyone. She just waited until they were done and said what needed to be said. Cole turned off the lamp. And if he threatens to sue, then Linda Ashworth will have a very short phone call. Saturday morning came the way bad weather does in Oklahoma. You see it coming from miles out, but it still hits hard. 10-2222, Frank's Chevy Silverado pulled up the ranch drive, tires popping on gravel. Beverly sat in the passenger seat clutching her purse like a woman heading into a doctor's appointment she'd been dreading. I was on the porch, coffee in hand, sitting, not standing. Cole was inside finishing the breakfast dishes. Frank stepped out and looked at the burned-out barn site. Charred foundation, scrap pile, the concrete pad still visible. He didn't comment on it. He didn't say, Tessa, I'm sorry about the barn. He didn't ask how the insurance was going. He didn't ask if Cole and I were managing. The first words out of his mouth were, let's go inside and talk about this. Beverly followed him in. She glanced at the barn wreckage and pressed her lips together, but she didn't speak. I led them to the kitchen table. 4 chairs, coffee pot on the counter, half full. I poured 2 cups for my parents without asking if they wanted any. Set them down, cream in the middle of the table next to the salt shaker. The kitchen drawer, the one where Cole had placed the envelope, was about 3 feet from Dad's right elbow. Cole came in from the hallway, drying his hands on a dish towel. He leaned against the counter near the stove, didn't sit, arms relaxed, just present. Dad put both palms flat on the table. He had the look of a man who had spent the 45-minute drive practicing what he was going to say. He cleared his throat. Your grandmother made a mistake with that trust. I'm her only child. That land and that money should have come to me. He paused. I want 50%. That's fair. Fair? He sat in my kitchen, a kitchen I scrubbed every night, in a house I heated every winter, on land I worked every day, and called his demand fair. Frank talked for several minutes. He'd rehearsed this. I could tell by the way he paused between points, like he was reading from notes he'd left in his truck. Your grandmother was confused at the end, he said. She didn't know what she was doing with that trust. She knew exactly what she was doing. She met with Linda Ashworth 8 times over 2 years. But I didn't say that. Not yet. A mother's estate should go to her children, he continued. Not her grandchildren. That's how it works. Beverly nodded once. A small, automatic nod, the kind that comes from decades of agreeing. I carried the Spanley name, Frank said, leaning forward. I'm the one who kept it going. Travis is my son. He's a Myers by blood. You're a Myers because you married Cole. I watched him say that. My last name, the one I was born with, the one on my high school diploma and my college degree, and the deed to this ranch, and he reduced it to a technicality. Travis is struggling, Frank said. Lower now, like he was sharing something confidential. The store's in trouble. This family needs to pull together. Beverly added, We're not trying to take everything, Tessa, just what's fair. There was that word again. Fair. I let the silence sit. Frank shifted in his chair. His coffee was untouched. Say something, he said. Don't just sit there like that. I looked at him over the rim of my cup. I'm listening, Dad. I want to make sure I hear everything you came here to say. He opened his mouth, closed it. He wasn't used to someone waiting him out. He was used to people flinching. I didn't flinch. I'd spent 4 years pulling calves and freezing rain. Sitting across from my father at a kitchen table was the easiest thing I'd done all week. I set my coffee cup down. Dad, Grandma wasn't confused. She worked with Linda Ashworth for 2 years on that trust. She met with Linda 8 times. I know because Linda told me. Frank's jaw tightened, but I kept going, steady as fence wire. The trust is irrevocable. That means it can't be changed after the grantor dies. You were notified at the reading 4 years ago. Oklahoma law gives you 2 years to contest. That window closed 23 months ago. I folded my hands on the table. The land is deeded in my name. The insurance policy is in my name and Cole's. There is no legal mechanism for you to claim 50% of anything on this property. The kitchen went very quiet. Outside, I could hear a cow calling her calf in the south pasture. Frank's face had gone red, starting at his neck and moving up, the way a thermometer fills. So, you're just going to hide behind lawyers? He said. I'm not hiding, Dad. I'm sitting right here. He stood up. His chair hit the wall behind him with a crack that made Beverly jump. This is wrong, he said. You know it's wrong. Your grandmother would have wanted this family to stay together. She would have wanted... Don't tell me what she wanted, Dad. I said it calmly, the way Elaine would have said it, flat, certain, like stating the temperature outside. She wrote it down. The room shifted. I could feel it. The air pressure changing, the way it does before a storm breaks. Frank stared at me. Beverly's hands were wrapped around her untouched coffee cup so tight her knuckles had gone white. Neither of them knew about the letter yet, but Frank heard something in my voice, something final. And for the first time since he walked through my door, he looked uncertain. Frank sat back down, changed tactics the way a man shifts gears when the engine starts knocking. Smoother, lower, quieter. He leaned forward and put his elbows on the table. Tessa, he said, softer now, almost gentle. I'm your father. I raised you. I put food on the table for 18 years, kept a roof over your head, bought your school supplies, drove you to volleyball practice. He paused. letting each item land like it was currency. Doesn't that count for something? Don't I get something for that? I looked at him. I looked at the man who had 2 children and invested in one. You raised me to believe I was worth less than my brother, I said. You paid for Travis's trade school. I rode a Greyhound to Stillwater on a scholarship I found myself. You gave Travis $15,000 for a store. Your wedding gift to me was a toast about Travis's business plans. Frank started to interrupt. I held up one hand. You never visited this ranch, not once in 4 years. Not when we built the barn, not when we bought our first cattle, not even when it burned. We were at Travis's birthday. I finished it for him. I know. Mom told me. At 2 a.m, standing in a field of ash, my mother told me it was my brother's birthday. I looked directly at Beverly. She flinched. She said, "We're busy, Tessa. It's Travis's birthday." The words sat in the kitchen like something physical, heavy, undeniable. Frank had no answer. He looked at Beverly. Beverly looked at her coffee. The silence stretched until it filled the kitchen. Then Frank played his last card, quiet, almost threatening. "If you don't help us voluntarily, I'll get a lawyer." I said, "You can try. Linda Ashworth says, cost you about $8,000 in legal fees to hear a judge tell you what I just told you for free." Cole straightened up from the counter. Cole walked to the kitchen drawer. He opened it slowly. He took out the manila envelope, cream-colored, slightly thicker than a standard mailing envelope, Elaine's handwriting visible on the front. He closed the drawer and walked to Frank's side of the table. Not aggressive, not rushed. The way a man walks when he knows exactly what he's carrying and why, he set the envelope on the table directly in front of Frank and stepped back. "Mr. Myers," Cole said. His voice was even, the same tone he used when presenting audit findings to a board. Professional. Controlled. Final. "You drove 45 minutes to ask for money. You didn't call when the barn burned. You didn't offer to help with cleanup. You didn't ask Tessa how she's doing. You came here for the inheritance. Pause. One breath. That's why you came, right?" Frank looked at the envelope, then at Cole, then back at the envelope. "What is this? Something Elaine wanted you to have?" Cole said. "She left it with Tessa with instructions. She said to give it to you when you showed who you really are." Cole stepped back to the counter, crossed his arms. He was done talking. Frank looked at me. My face was steady. No tears. No smirk. No triumph. Just the calm that comes from 4 years of waiting and knowing exactly how this moment would go. Frank picked up the envelope, turned it over, saw Elaine's cursive on the back, the words I'd memorized without trying. "He won't like what I wrote, but he needs to read it, and you need to let him." Beverly leaned forward. Her eyes were wide. Frank tore the seal. He reached inside and pulled out a single sheet of ranch stationery, the kind with the little cattle brand logo at the top, and began to read. Frank read silently. His lips moved, a habit from childhood, Beverly once told me. One he never outgrew. The kitchen clock ticked. A cow lowed somewhere in the south pasture. Wind pushed against the window screen. I watched my father's face, the way you watch weather moving across a field. First came confusion. His brow furrowed like he was reading a language he didn't quite speak. Then recognition. Elaine's handwriting. Her phrasing. The way she wrote. The way she talked. Blunt. Unhurried. Specific. Then something I had never once seen on Frank Myers' face. Shame. His jaw loosened. The color drained from his cheeks. Not red anymore, but gray, like concrete dust. And his hands. The mechanic's hands that had rebuilt 10,000 engines. The hands that had never shaken while holding a wrench or a beer or a steering wheel. Those hands began to tremble. The letter shook in his grip. Beverly reached across and took the paper from him. She read it. I watched her pupils move, line by line. Her face went from pale to white. Snorts. Elaine's words landing exactly where they were aimed. You chose easy over right. Travis didn't stay out of loyalty. He stayed because you made staying comfortable. Tessa left because you made leaving necessary. Love doesn't mean I owe you what you didn't earn. Beverly set the letter on the table. She covered her mouth with one hand. Frank sat motionless. His palms flat on the table now, pressing down like he was trying to hold the surface still. The coffee I'd poured him was cold. The cream I'd set out was untouched. My father had spent his whole life running from his mother's judgment. And now, 4 years after she died, she had finally caught up. Frank shoved back from the table so hard the chair hit the wall for the second time. He stood up, face twisted, finger pointing at the letter like it had bitten him. "She had no right," he said, loud now, louder than the kitchen was built for. "She had no right to write that about me." His voice cracked on the last word. He paced 2 steps and turned back. "I was a good son. I visited her every month. I mowed her yard. I called her on her birthday. And she writes this, she puts it in an envelope and gives it to my daughter to throw in my face?" I sat in my chair, hands in my lap. I didn't lean back. I didn't lean forward. I didn't raise my voice. "You visited her once a month for an hour," I said. "You mowed her yard so the neighbors wouldn't talk. You called on her birthday because Beverly reminded you. And you never once asked how the ranch was doing." Frank jabbed his finger toward me. "Don't you tell me what kind of son I was." "I'm not telling you anything, Dad. Grandma is." That stopped him. Mid-gesture, his hand frozen in the air. Because it was true. These weren't my accusations. They were Elaine's, handwritten, sealed, and delivered from a woman he could never argue with again. You can shout at your daughter. You can slam your hand on her kitchen table, but you can't shout back at your dead mother's handwriting. Beverly stood up. Her chair moved quietly. She knew how to be unobtrusive. "Frank," she said, "we should go." Frank spun toward her. "I'm not going anywhere until..." Beverly raised her voice, the first and only time in this story. "Frank, we should go." He stared at her. She held it. The silence between them was 30 years of her swallowing and 1 moment of her refusing to. Frank stood by the kitchen door, his hand on the frame, not quite leaving. He tried one more thing, the weapon he'd used my entire life: obligation. "After everything I did for you," he said. His voice was raw. "After 18 years, this is how you repay me?" I stood up. First time during the conversation, I rose from my chair. I wasn't dramatic about it. I didn't push the chair back or square my shoulders. I just stood. The way you stand when you're ready to close a gate. "Dad," I said, "you told me at my wedding that marrying well should be enough for me." I paused, let the memory settle. "You said you married well. That should be enough." I watched him register the echo, his own words coming back across 4 years of silence. "Turns out you were right about one thing. Coal is more than enough, and so am I. We built this ranch together on land your own mother chose to give me because she saw something in me that you never looked for." I stepped toward the front door and opened it. October air came in, cool and clean, the smell of pasture grass and diesel and Oklahoma clay. "You don't get 50%, Dad. You don't get 10%. You get what you earned, which is exactly what you gave me for 32 years. I held the door open. "But you do get that letter. Grandma wanted you to have it. Take it home. Read it again when you're ready." Frank looked at me, at Cole, at the burned-out barn, visible through the kitchen window, at the letter in his trembling hand. He walked out without another word. Beverly followed. At the porch step, she stopped and turned. She opened her mouth. I saw the shape of a word forming. Then she closed it. She got in the truck. Gravel under tires. Dust rising. Gone. I stood on the porch until the dust from Frank's tires settled on the county road. The cattle in the south pasture had their heads down grazing. Wind moved through the dry grass. A hawk circled high above the fence line. Cole came up behind me. He didn't say, "Are you okay?" Instead, he said, "You did exactly what Elaine would have done." I leaned against the porch rail. She would have said it better. "She did say it," Cole said. "You just delivered it." We went inside. I picked up the coffee cups, both of them, Dad's and Beverly's, and washed them in the sink, dried them, put them back in the cabinet. The act of cleaning someone else's cup when they didn't deserve it felt right. That's who I raised myself to be. Not bitter, just finished. That evening I called Linda Ashworth, told her what happened. Linda laughed. The quiet, short laugh of a woman who'd seen this coming. "He won't file, Tessa. He's a proud man who just got a letter from his dead mother telling him he failed her. That's a heavier sentence than any court could give." I sat on the porch that night looking at the burned-out barn foundation, concrete and rebar, black with soot, but level and solid. the kind of thing that survives fire. Above it, stars. Grady County has good stars. No city light to wash them out. Somewhere past the south fence, the coyote called again. I thought about Grandma Elaine, 5'3", bad knees, couldn't lift a bale of hay the last 5 years of her life. But that letter, written on ranch, stationary with a ballpoint pen, did more damage than any courtroom proceeding could have managed. The next day, Travis called. He'd heard from Beverly. Dad said Grandma wrote some nasty letter, Travis said. His voice was tight, defensive, the voice of someone who suspects they're included in the accusation. She was always weird about the ranch. She wasn't weird, Travis. She was paying attention. So, you're just going to keep everything? The land? The money? All of it? While my store goes under? I leaned against the kitchen counter. Dad gave you $15,000 to open that store. He paid for your trade school, both semesters, even the one you didn't finish. He bought your truck. He co-signed your apartment lease. He never did any of that for me. I let that list settle. Then, so when you say I'm keeping everything, think about what you've already gotten. Travis went quiet. I could hear him breathing. That's different, he said. How? He couldn't answer. He hung up. I didn't call back. Within 2 weeks, the auto parts store on the corner lot in Chickasha closed. Travis had been behind on inventory payments for months. Suppliers cut him off. He filed for Chapter 7 personal bankruptcy, which, in a small town, is about as private as a barn fire. Everyone knows. The lease on the store's building had 18 months remaining. Dad had co-signed it. That meant Frank was now personally responsible for roughly $14,000 in remaining lease payments, money he did not have. The son Frank had invested everything in was now costing him more. The irony was almost mechanical in its precision. Frank spent his adult life pouring resources into Travis and withholding them from me. The return on his investment was a bankrupt store, a co-signed lease, and a 29-year-old son moving back into his childhood bedroom. 2 weeks after the Saturday confrontation, a card appeared in my mailbox. Standard envelope, Beverly's handwriting. Inside, a Hallmark card, the kind with a watercolor flower on the front and a generic message about family. Below the printed text, Beverly had written in pen, Tessa, I read the letter again last night. Your grandmother was right about your father. She was right about me, too. I should have said something years ago. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I wanted you to know I see you. I always did. I was just too afraid to say it out loud. Mom. I held that card for a long time, sitting at the kitchen table where Frank had shaken and shouted and failed. I read Beverly's words 3 times. I wanted them to be enough. I wanted a few lines on a Hallmark card to undo 32 years of silence, 32 years of choosing the easy side, 32 years of whispering $50 into a sock when the door was closed. But a card is not a conversation. An apology written in private is still a private act. It changes nothing in the room where the damage was done. I wrote back on a postcard, 1 line. Thank you for saying it. When you're ready to say it in front of Dad, call me. I put the postcard in the mailbox, flag up. Beverly had spent her whole life writing drafts of apologies she never sent. This was the first one that actually made it to my mailbox. I wanted to reward the effort, but I was done pretending it fixed anything. Beverly didn't call that month. She didn't call the next month either. The postcard stayed in whatever drawer she kept her secrets in. I didn't follow up. The door was open, but I wasn't going to hold it. The insurance check came through 6 weeks after the fire, $172,000 after deductible. Cole and I hired a local contractor, Dawson Brothers, the same crew that had put up barns for 3 other ranches in the county. Steel frame this time, not wood. Concrete slab floor. Updated electrical throughout. Every wire, every junction. Box. Every outlet up to current code. No more knob and tube. No more saving up and hoping for the best. The new barn went up in 6 weeks. I watched the frame rise from the same spot where I'd stood watching the old one burn. Steel trusses against blue Oklahoma sky. I helped where I could, held measurements, ran wire, made lunch for the crew. Cole handled the insurance paperwork and the inspection schedule. When the barn was finished, I did one thing that wasn't practical. I found the old barn door, a heavy plank door from Elaine's original construction, the one piece that survived the fire. Charred on one side, scorched across the grain, but the planks held together. I mounted it on the inside wall of the new barn, next to a framed photo of Grandma Elaine, standing in the same spot in 1987, holding a newborn calf in both arms. 85 head of cattle, healthy. Calving season coming in February. The ranch was back. Cole updated the policy, filed the amended documents, triple-checked every endorsement. The ranch was now better insured, better built, and better protected than it had ever been. And it was still my name on the deed. Still my hands that fixed the fences. Still Elaine's land, worked the way she would have wanted, on my knees in the dirt before sunrise because the land didn't care about my last name or anyone else's excuses. 3 months after the confrontation, Frank had not called, had not visited, had not filed any legal action. Linda Ashworth confirmed it. No filings in the Grady County Courthouse. I told you, she said over the phone. He won't file. He can't afford the legal fees, and he knows the answer before he asks the question. I heard through the feed store that Frank had been quieter at the garage. Less bluster. Fewer stories about Travis's big plans. The co-signed lease payments were eating into Frank and Beverly's household budget. $778 a month for the next 18 months. Travis had moved back into his childhood bedroom. 29 years old, working the counter at a tire shop on Route 9 for $16 an hour. The heir of the Myers family, back where he started. Sleeping under a ceiling fan that Frank installed when Travis was 6. I didn't gloat. I didn't call to check on them. I didn't send a Christmas card or a casserole or a pointed message. That's not who Grandma Elaine raised me to be, but I did do one thing. On a Tuesday morning in January before dawn, I drove to the cemetery outside Tuttle. Elaine's headstone was granite, simple. Her name, her dates, and one line she picked out herself. She kept the land. I set a jar of wildflowers on the base. Brown-eyed Susans, dried but still holding color. I sat on the cold ground for 20 minutes. I said one thing out loud. I gave him the letter, Grandma. He needed to hear it from you. The wind picked up. The grass around the headstone bent and straightened. I got up, brushed off my jeans, and drove back to the ranch. There were cattle to feed. Here's where things stand now. The ranch is running well. New barn stands strong. Steel and concrete, built to last. Cattle numbers are growing. We're up to 95 head. Cole mentioned the other day that we might need to hire seasonal help for calving season for the first time. That felt like something worth noting. The ranch Grandma Elaine built alone is now big enough to need extra hands. Frank and Beverly, I haven't heard from them in 3 months. I don't chase. The door isn't locked, but I'm not standing in the doorway waiting either. If Beverly ever finds the nerve to say, in front of Frank, what she wrote in that card, she knows my number. Until then, the postcard said everything I needed to say. Travis is working at the tire shop. $16 an hour. Living with Frank and Beverly, the heir of the Myers legacy. Eating dinner at the same kitchen table where Frank once told me my purpose was to marry well. I don't hate my father. I understand him. The 11-year-old boy whose mother poured her grief into ranch work after his father died, who felt invisible next to 160 acres of Oklahoma clay. Frank spent his adult life making sure his son never felt that way. He overcorrected so hard, he forgot he had a daughter. I understand that. Understanding is not the same as accepting. And accepting is not the same as enabling. Grandma Elaine understood that distinction better than anyone. She loved Frank. She wrote it in the letter, but she also refused to hand him something he didn't earn, just because he carried her last name. Beverly's card is in my bedside drawer. I read it sometimes. Not for comfort. For reminder that she saw and still chose silence for 32 years. One card doesn't erase that, but it's a start. The consequences landed where they were earned. Frank lost nothing I took from him. He lost what he spent. $15,000 on Travis's store. Gone. $14,000 in co-signed lease payments, coming due monthly. Decades of investing in one child, while pretending the other didn't count. His mother's respect, which he never knew he was losing until he read it in her handwriting. Travis lost the store, the apartment, the comfortable fiction that being the son meant being the winner. He's 29, making less per hour than I made at the feed store co-op during college. Beverly lost the luxury of neutrality. She can no longer tell herself that staying silent kept the peace. The peace was never kept. It was just deferred and the interest compounded. I lost a barn. I rebuilt it in 6 weeks. I did not lose the land, the cattle, the marriage, or myself. Elaine's letter sits in a frame in my office, the small room off the new barn where I keep the ranch books and the vaccine log. It's not displayed for visitors. There's no spotlight on it. It just hangs on the wall next to Elaine's photo in the old barn door, a reminder that some people see you clearly even when they're gone. The fire that nearly broke me turned out to be the thing that revealed everyone's true priorities. My parents came running, not to help, but to collect. And in doing so, they proved exactly what Grandma Elaine had written on a piece of ranch stationery years before they ever knocked on my door. I learned that family isn't measured by who shows up for birthdays. It's measured by who shows up when the barn is burning. That's my story. One fire, one phone call at 2 a.m. One letter that waited 4 years to be opened. If this story reminded you that your worth isn't decided by the people who raised you, it's built by your own hands, take that with you. If you know someone who needs to hear this, share this video. Thank you for being here. Drop a comment, hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.